Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. Welcome to another edition of Midweek Maiden. This is where we get together on Wednesdays to discuss Iron Maiden related topics. I apologize for this curtain here. I'm still working on my Twitch live stream where I play some of my original, not sure what to call it, metal wave, synth wave, doom wave compositions. If you're interested in that, link in the description. For today's episode, problems that I have with modern Iron Maiden. When I'm talking about modern Iron Maiden, I'm referring to, and people have probably heard me use this expression on the channel, the Rob era of the band, the Return of Bruce era, the reunion era of the band. So Brave New World all the way up to their most recent album, Senjutsu. And, let me be clear that I do really like the albums that they put out during this time. A Matter of Life and Death, A Brave New World. I loved the most recent one, Senjutsu. I'll leave a link in the description. I've done some reviews, I think, on A Matter of Life and Death and maybe some of the other ones. But there are some things with this era of the band that bother me and that prevent these albums from being 10 out of 10s for me. As much as I like these albums and as much as I appreciate the fact that Iron Maiden is still putting out new music, putting out records fairly regularly every 4 to 5 years, which, in this day and age, that's a regular schedule. When they tour, they play a lot of songs from their new albums. So they're very engaged with this part of their career, and it seems like they're very energized by it. They're very passionate about it. It's just not something that they're just doing for an excuse to tour. They really seem to get behind it, and it's created almost a whole new chapter in the era of the band. But for me, none of these albums would really break through any of the classic albums from the 80s. The classic stuff from the 80s would rank higher than any of these Rob era albums from the band. And there's really two issues that I have with this era of the band, and I know other people do too, because I've heard this topic brought up, and I've had this discussion with many of my Maiden friends. One of them is, and they both sort of play in with each other, tie into each other. One of them is the length of the songs. They lack editing. And they will tell you, and they will talk about how this is like a progressive phase of the band, but I don't really hear Iron Maiden, this era of the band, being progressive. These songs don't, some of them do, but most of them just, to me, are just long songs, and they scream to be edited. So many of the songs start off with slow intros, and then, or big long solo sections in the middle, and sometimes it works, but it's often where I sit back and I think, man, if they just trimmed 2 or 3 minutes out of this song, it would be so better focused and so much more to the point. I would love if somebody had the technology to do this. I guess I could do this, but I don't think I would do a good job at it. To do that themselves, to maybe use some sort of software editing and take one of these modern era Maiden songs that could really use some editing and trim it down to hear how, in my opinion, how much more effective some of these songs would be if they were way more focused and got to the point quicker and didn't. And a lot of times, it's not that I don't like the individual sections, it's just that these things tend to drag on for too long. Like these intros that I talk about, these slow intros where, Bruce is singing kind of in a lower pitch of his voice, and then it starts to build up. And I get it, that's cool sometimes, but they use that so often. And sections where there's just long soloing or riffs that just go on too long, or maybe there's too many verses. Again, sometimes it works, but a lot of times it just doesn't for me, and it's something that plagues pretty much every Iron Maiden album from this era, maybe save for Brave New World. Brave New World is pretty focused. That problem didn't really start for me until A Matter of Life and Death, but it's still even on Brave New World a little bit. Like, look at, for instance, The Wicker Man. That's a good, tight song. The riff comes in right away, verse, chorus. It's a tight, focused song, like something you would have heard from them during the 80s. Now, that doesn't mean that every song has to be like that. They had a lot of really long songs in the earlier era of the band in the 80s. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Alexander the Great, all these, Phantom of the Opera. They had a lot of long songs, but those songs seemed to keep my interest better because they changed quicker, the riffs changed quicker. It just seemed like even though they were long, they were still more focused. And that plays into part two of the problem that I have with this era of the band. And I think it's that they don't have a strong producer, meaning I think Kevin Shirley is a good producer, but I think that he is there really just capturing the sounds, helping the band capture the sounds. I could be wrong, but I don't think Kevin Shirley is telling them like, hey guys, you should cut that out, or this is too long, or that needs to be fixed. I think the band is way past that point, and this is something that a lot of bands that have been around this long, they reach a point where you almost can't tell them what to do. Metallica is the same thing. Like, they're going to do what they want to do, and nobody can stop them, for better or for worse. I would think in Metallica, I'll make a video about Metallica, this same topic, that nobody stops them and says, guys, that snare drum just does not sound right, or this is just not right, you need to fix this. But they're just beyond that, and I really think Iron Maiden is beyond that too. And I think that Steve Harris is the guy that makes these decisions about the production and the songs and the overall arc of the whole thing, and Steve just has his way of doing things. But I really wish that they had somebody like in the classic days, like Martin Birch. Now, they were a younger band then. Martin Birch comes in on Killers. He has a great reputation at that point, having worked with Deep Purple, for instance, a band that all the guys in Maiden respected. So they listened to Martin Birch when he said things, and I get the impression that Martin Birch was probably somebody that could stop them and say, hey, that needs to be edited better. That intro is too long, or that song just doesn't get to the point quick. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've never really heard them discuss this, but when you think of the stuff from the 80s, even like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, which I would consider to be probably their most progressive album, if you had to pick a progressive album from Iron Maiden, and even though that has some long songs like the title track and everything, and some of the stuff on side 2, it still seems to move a lot better, and the sections seem to flow better. Here, this just feels, the modern era of the band, it just feels like, they're just trying to insert sections. Like Steve wants to insert his thing into the song, so here's his part of the song, and then here's something else that they just, this long intro. The guitar players want this long picked guitar intro thing, so they're trying to keep everybody happy. I don't know what the thought process is with the band now. And hey, and maybe part of it, my friend Matthias, who's been here on Midweek Maiden and been at the Lair a bunch of times, I think it was him that was telling me about how he read an interview where Steve or Bruce basically said, like, the way they work now is the only way they can do it to keep everybody happy and to get things done. And maybe that's what it is. In order for everybody to be happy, everybody has to be able to throw their thing into the song, or, this is just the way that they operated. These long albums, long songs, long intros, long guitar solos, long outros, choruses, repeated over and over. Yeah, maybe it's just what they need to do in order to put music out. And if that's the case, I'm okay with it, because again, it's not that I don't like these albums. I really like some of these albums. In fact, I really like all of them. There's none of them that I don't like from this reunion era of the band. It's just that there's always this nagging feeling when I listen to these albums, like, man, if these were just edited a little bit better, if this was a little bit more compact and a little bit more to the point, maybe one or two songs on the album that are really long, it would the albums would be so much more effective for me. And whereas they stand now, you know, I'd give them maybe 8 out of 10 for most of these records, 7, 8, maybe even a 9 out of 10, but I can't really give any of these albums a 10 out of 10. I can't say any of these reunion era albums are as good or better than Peace of Mind or Number of the Beast or Somewhere in Time or any of the classic Killers, you know, any of the classic early stuff. So, all right, so there you go. There's, you know, some issues that I have with the modern era of Iron Maiden. Now, let me know in the comments down below, what about you guys? Now, if you're somebody who just doesn't like this era of the band, hey, I get it. I've talked about this in other videos on the channel. I get it for these reasons that I described. You know, a lot of people, this is a big sticking point for them, amongst other things. You know, maybe they just don't like the direction that the band has gone in. But, you know, give me something constructive. Don't just say you know, this era of the band stinks, you know, or sucks. Tell me what it is specifically that you don't like about it. That if you could fix it, you know, what is it that you would want them to do differently to, you know, for you that would make this era of the band better? All right, I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you check out all my social media links, and I'll link some of the other Iron Maiden videos down there in the description. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.